Hello. Today we are going to discuss Section 19 of Transfer of Property Act and Section 20 of Transfer of Property Act. Section 19 of Property Act provides for vested interest, and Section 21 of Transfer of Property Act provides for contingent interest. So first we'll go through Section 19 vested interest. Section 19 provides for where on a transfer of property an interest therein is created in favor of a person without specifying the time when it is to take effect, or in terms specifying that it is to take effect forthwith, or on the happening of an event which must happen, such interest is vested unless a contrary intention appears from the terms of the transfer. It further says, a vested interest is not defeated by the death of the transferee before he obtains possession. So, what technically it means is when a transfer is made without specifying the time when it is to take effect, first, second, or in terms of specifying that it is to take effect forthwith, and third, on the happening of an event which must happen. If either these three phrases happens, which are technically considered as the transfer is a transfer of vested interest. So what are the three phrases? We have to go again one by one. First phrase here is without specifying the time when it is to take effect. Imagine a situation where a person A transfers his property to a person B without specifying when the ownership will get transferred, or when the vested interest will lie in the B, who is a transferee. In that situation, it is usually considered that the transfer is to effect immediately. Now come to the second phrase, which says, in terms specifying that it is to take effect forthwith. Again, the same situation. A transfers the property to B, saying that the property will get transferred to B immediately. Then in that case, situation, B has the vested interest in the property. Always remember, forthwith here means immediately. And the third and most relevant part, which is mentioned here, is on the happening of an event which must happen. So we have to understand that transfer is put on a condition that is dependent upon an event which is of must nature, that is, which is definitely going to happen. So what are the examples of such events which are definitely going to happen? So the examples of such events can be, you can simply post or specify a date on which this transfer will happen. For example, if today it is 30th March 2020, you can simply say on 30th May 2020, the transfer will take place. So we know that 30th May 2020 will definitely going to come. It is an event of must nature. So the transfer will take place on a particular event, which is definitely going to be there. Another example of is an example of you can simply say example of death. Let's understand this by an example. A wants to transfer his property to B, saying the property will get transferred to B on the death of C. Property will get transferred to B on the death of C. Here understand the death of C is inevitable because death is an incident which is of must nature. It happens. That is inevitable. Therefore, this particular transfer is, or you can say B has a vested interest in the property because this condition is definitely going to happen, or it is a condition which is definitely or which must happen. Uh, Now come to the last part. A vested interest is not debated by the death of the transferee before he obtains possession. What does it mean? It simply means if A wants to transfer the property to B with a condition that the B will get the property on the death of C. Understand again? A wants to transfer the property to B on a condition that B will get the property on the death of C. Now here B has vested interest because this condition that B will get the property on C is a event of must nature. So in case imagine that B dies before C, what is happening here? B dies before C. So this particular part clarifies a vested interest is not defeated by the death of the transferee before he obtains the possession. So technically the possession to B would have come after the death of C. In this case, if B dies before C, then the property will go to B's heir after the death of C. This is what is happening here. So vested interest is not defeated by the death of the transferee. He anyway obtains the possession, or his heirs obtains the possession of the same property. Now, technically, the question arises: what do we mean by vested interest? Understand, vested interest simply means that transferee has a ownership in the property and the transfer is complete. There's no or nothing left in the transfer. So technically vested interest simply means transfer is complete even if the delivery will take place at some point in future. So transferee has the ownership. He may not be able to enjoy the property currently or in present, but he will have the ownership or possession of the property in the future. That's why sometimes vested interest is also uh, called by courts as immediate right of present enjoyment. Let me write it: immediate right of present enjoyment and present right for future enjoyment. It is usually called by the courts. Supreme Court in one of two cases have expressed this expression for vested interest, that immediate right of present enjoyment and present right of future enjoyment. Oh, sorry. Yeah, happens. Or so it technically means in vested interest you may have an immediate right of present enjoyment. It means with ownership comes the possession as well, or you have the ownership, that is the present right, but you will get the possession of the property at a later period of time. So this is present right of future enjoyment or immediate right of present enjoyment. That is, you have both ownership as well as possession. However, at the later case, it is only ownership. Possession comes at a different point of time. Now we'll go through the explanation of this same section. Explanation of section 19 says an intention that an interest shall not be vested is not to be inferred merely from a provision whereby enjoyment thereof is postponed, or whereby a property interest in the same property is given or reversed to some other person, or whereby income arising from the property is directed to be accumulated until the time of enjoyment arrives, or from a provision that if a particular event shall happen, the interest shall pass to another person. Uh, Technically, if we see, this explanation is a very much clear. It says, uh, yeah, there are 3-4 points we have to keep in mind. An intention that interest shall not be vested is not to be inferred merely from a provision whereby enjoyment is postponed. Just merely because the enjoyment of a property is postponed, we shall not infer that it is not a vested interest. Imagine a situation: A wants to transfer the property to B on the death of C. So B has the ownership of the property, but where we understand we will get the possession of the property at the death of C, right? So only because the enjoyment here is postponed in this case, we shall not consider that it is not a vested interest. It is a vested interest. Similarly, there is another expression where a prior interest in creating the same property. Understand this by this particular example again. A different example, in fact. A wants to transfer the property to C who is unborn. For this, he creates a life interest in the name of B, right? So where life interest is created in the name of B, it means B will enjoy the property till his lifetime. It does not mean that C does not have a vested interest in the property. The moment C gets the birth, he will have the vested interest in the property. Similarly, our direction to accumulate until the enjoyment arrives is also not to be considered, as a person or the transferee does not have a vested interest in the property. It is very simple explanation. So this is all from the vested interest, from the part of vested interest. Now we shall move on to uh, contingent interest, which is section 21. It says, where on a transfer of property an interest therein is created in favor of a person to take effect only on the happening of a specified uncertain event, or if a specified uncertain event shall not happen, such person thereby acquires a contingent interest in the property. It further says, such interest becomes a vested interest in the former case on the happening of an event, in the later when the happening of an event becomes impossible. So what does it say? It says, where an interest is created in favor of a person which is to take effect only on the happening of an uncertain event, a specified uncertain event, right? Now compare this with section 20, which says on the happening of an event which must happen. So in case of vested interest, we are talking of an event which must happen, right? In case of contingent event interest, we are talking about a specified uncertain event, or if a specified uncertain event shall not happen. So let's understand this by example. A wants to transfer to B on a condition that C will have a daughter. What is happening here? A transfer the property to B on a condition that property will get transferred to B only when C will have a daughter in future, right? So technically this transfer between A and B is dependent upon happening of an uncertain event, which is the birth of a daughter to C. right? C may not have any child, or C may have sons only. So this is technically a specified uncertain event. We shall further go on. Such interest becomes a vested interest in the former case on the happening of the event, in the later case when the happening of event becomes impossible. So such interest becomes vested interest in the former case. It says this interest which is contingent here, because C does not have any daughter till now or till date, this interest becomes vested when C will have a daughter. C actually has a daughter or will have a daughter, right? What happens in few years down the line, if C has daughters, then the property or the equation between A and B becomes a vested interest, or we will assume a vested interest in the property. Otherwise, if C does not have any daughter, then it will remain a contingent interest. We will not have an interest in the property. So technically, uh, contingent contingent events simply means that transfer is not complete and it is dependent upon a condition precedent. And if that condition precedent happens or fulfills its requirements, only then it becomes vested interest. Otherwise, it remains as a contingent interest. Uh, let's go to the exception part. Exception says where under a transfer of property, a person becomes entitled to an interest therein upon attaining a particular age, and the transferor also gives him absolutely the income to arise from such interest before he reaches that age, or directs the income or so much thereof as he may be necessary to be applied for his benefit. Such interest is not contingent. Let's understand this with an example. A wants to transfer the property to C, who is unborn, by creating a life interest, right? This is completely fine. Now understand what is happening here. It says C will attain the property at the age of 18 years, right? However, he also puts a condition that whatever income shall be generated from the property, whatever, or let's understand this simple example. A simply transfer his property to C. C is alive. Says the property, the transfer says C will get the property at the age of 18 years. Imagine currently C is 12 years old. So after 6 years, she will have the property or vested interest in the property, or will assume the ownership of the property. However, if the transferor also gives him the absolutely the right to income arising from such property, right? A also mentions that C will till that time from 12 years to 18 years will enjoy the property or income generated from such property. Absolutely. In that situation, the duration between 12 years to 18 years is not a contingent interest. In fact, it is a vested interest as per the exception. In this exception, I am repeating the example again. A transfer the property to C, saying C will have the vested interest in the property at the age of 18 years. However, currently C is 12 years old, right? So technically it means the transfer says C will have the property after 6 years as per the age. But A also gives C right to use the income generated from the same property absolutely. So in that situation, if we read this exception, it says this exception makes the right of C a vested interest in the property even before C reaches 18 years age or 18 years age limit in this as per the transfer. So this is section 18. So technically, what is the difference between section 19 and section 21? देखो, vested interest is immediate right of present enjoyment or present right of future enjoyment, which I have already explained previously. In cases of contingent interest, the right over property is dependent upon happening or not happening of uncertain events, right? Second difference is almost similar to first difference. It is a present and fixed right in the property. It is future possible right in the property. Why? Because it depends upon the happening of uncertain events. Vested interest is heritable. Contingent interest is not heritable, right? Vested interest is transferable. Contingent interest is also transferable, but provided that the second transferee will also have a contingent interest in the property. Imagine a situation. Let's understand this by an example. A transfers the property to B on a condition which is uncertain. So depends upon uncertain events. So technically, C has vested interest or contingent interest in the property. Now, if C further transfer the same property to D, D will also have the contingent interest in the property. So, though the contingent interest is transferable, but the person to whom it is transferred, that person or the second transferee will also have a contingent interest, which is definitely dependent upon the happening of that uncertain event. Fifth point is vested interest is attachable in the decree of a court. Contingent interest is not attachable in the decree of the court. So this is what the difference between or the overall understanding of section 19 and section 21. I will definitely welcome any questions on the concepts relating to section 19 and 21. Thank you. This is it from my side.